all there. The second thing is estrogen imbalances, estrogen dominance. And again, this is a whole huge topic. I did an entire chapter again in that book. It's an entire presentation in of itself. What I'll say about it is that when your hormones are inverted, it basically means that your androgen hormones, which are in other words, they're your youthening hormones. Androgen typically means male hormones, but I'm using it differently. I'm using it in terms of juvenile hormones, meaning your youthening hormones, the hormones that you had when you were at the peak of your youth. For example, when you go through puberty, that's usually when you're at the peak. Even when you're 5, 6 years old, you have like everything. You're the most neotenized. You're the most youthful. Right? Does that make sense? So over the course of our life, our hormones get imbalanced and inverted. A lot of it is because of the toxic environment. Thank you. Thank you. A lot of it is because of the xenoestrogens in our environment. Plastic is one of the biggest ones. These are all endocrine disruptors. Pesticides, by the way, herbicides, fungicides, rodenticides, insecticides, all those kind of things. Everything that's been chemically sprayed, the stuff coming off our carpets, paint, etc. Those are all endocrine disruptors. And basically what that means is they're fake estrogens that mimic our body's endogenous estrogen receptors, and they start mass producing forms of estrogen in the body that's not natural. What that means for a woman is that will start to imbalance your progesterone, which is the dominant female youthening hormone, progesterone. In men, that will imbalance your testosterone. That's the dominant youthening androidal hormone in men, right? Most of us know that. So that's a basic explanation. It goes much further. There's foods that are phytoestrogenic, like soy, for example. Not only is soy one of the biggest food allergies, it's thyroid agitating, digestively agitating for the most part, but it's also phytoestrogenic and can contribute to certain forms of cancer, which are estrogen dominant situations. Breast cancer, prostate cancer, fibroids, endometriosis, things of this nature. Those are estrogen dominant conditions, just to simplify that. And then moving on from there is that's obviously, that can go down the rabbit hole for a long time. Moving on from there though, I wanted to point that out just because I think it's super valuable information and valuable things to just know about. From there, I really want to discuss this whole epidemic that we're dealing with, which is the genetic modification and contamination of our overall food supply. And what I want to illuminate for you is our microbiome. Who here is familiar with the term the microbiome? Okay, cool. So the microbiome is basically your biological garden. And the microbiome is not just your gut or your small intestine, by the way. It's not just the garden and colony of bacteria that live symbiotically within your gut, right? It's not just about digestion and assimilation and elimination. We'll get to that point. But your microbiome is all over your body. Your skin ideally is coated with microorganisms and bacteria that are beneficial to you and affect the expression of your genetics. So one of the big issues in our world is the overuse of sterilizing substances. Not to mention like antibiotics. Just on antibiotics, that's one of the biggest abused pharmaceuticals in the world. Now, I'm not saying antibiotics haven't saved lives. I'm not saying they don't have a place. What I would say is that antibiotics are a recent invention. They haven't been around that long. Up to World War II, I think, was when antibiotics were actually patented as a pharmaceutical tool, a pharmaceutical form of antibiotics. Before then, we had natural antibiotics. The main antibiotic that we used that worked just fine was colloidal silver. And then when Big Pharma came into the picture, they basically wanted to patent the antibiotic, and they told the people behind colloidal silver that were prescribing it or selling it, they basically said that you cannot market this as an antibiotic. You can only market it as a mineral supplement. And it became illegal to mention that it had antibiotic properties, right? And that's how that whole thing started, like many other examples. And so this whole antibiotic deal is one of the biggest disruptions to our health, specifically when it comes to digestive issues, immune system collapses, so many different things. Why people have are in so disarray digestively, why there's such an influx of candida, fungal infections, bacterial infections, parasite infections. A lot of this is actually because their microbiome has been so disturbed, largely because of the use and the overuse of pharmaceutical antibiotics, which are non-denominational antibiotics. What does that mean? That basically means that they kill all forms of bacteria. They kill all forms of bacteria. So if you take an antibiotic, then that means the beneficial bacteria in your gut, in your body, is also under assault too. And when that happens, then certain other organisms start to come into play, let's say like a parasite or a fungal infection or a virus, and now they don't have the beneficial bacteria that would naturally be symbiotically grouped in protecting us from those infections. Now we don't have that, so now people are having fungal infections like crazy, and we call that candida, right? That's one example. There's, it can go on indefinitely, but basically we're dropping like a nuke bomb inside of us and don't really even know why we're doing it. We're just told to do it. Like, oh yeah, you have one of the biggest reasons for antibiotic use is actually for things that have nothing to do with bacterial infections. One thing, if you have a bacterial infection, okay, fine. But a lot of it's for viral infections. And it's like, this has no use for viruses. It's not designed, it's not virucidal, it's not an antiviral. It has nothing to do with viruses, but it can help proliferate the virus because now you don't have the garden that actually keeps all the organisms symbiotically working together. Does that idea make sense?